How do you know if your actions are determined by preference or judgment, or maybe even inspiration?
Let's take the first part first. How do I tell if the actions are
Determined by preference or judgment?
Preference and judgment have a common root. Anybody guess what the common root of preference and judgment is? No.
Desire?
Comparison. And when you have any part of ourself that meets a moment by comparing it to what else other than what and who I have been in the past, there's very little between the difference between the pain that preference or judgment produces. They both produce the same pain. Let's go on.
Do you want to address this part about inspiration? Or is that inherent?
Well, I think the person is saying, is judgment or preference determined by inspiration? And the inspiration has nothing whatsoever to do with preference or judgment. You know, it's a difficult thing to understand in some ways. I used to have a personal little acronym. You know how I like to put things into acronyms? P.I.P, P-I-P. And P.I.P stands for preference is pain. And yet, everyone, by their essence, has natural preferences.
Right.
You say tomato, I say tomato. We have natural preferences according to our conditioning, to our everything about us. But when my preference becomes a pain, it means that that preference is really not mine anymore, but rather has been co-opted by a person, a personality, that defines itself by its preferences. And the way you know it's not really you is that you would never make yourself suffer over what you think your greatest pleasure is. I mean, it makes no sense. You need to see how much you suffer over preference.
Right.
And tell me what good is preference. Like, for instance, how many of you prefer it to be 80 degrees than 98? Raise your hands, except for my wife, maybe. So if I go outside and I suffer because it's hot, can you see that the negativity about the temperature isn't because of the temperature? The negativity is because of something in me that's holding some standard up as being preferential under all possibilities. So learning to separate where resistance comes in because your preference isn't met is a key to learning to separate yourself from this part of you that isn't you at all. Following me?
Yeah.
All right.
You once said that we live within a very narrow bandwidth.
Very narrow range, yeah. If we were a radio, we'd have a half a channel.